served all of them well. It's a pleasure to speak with people who are right inside this industry. And it's been a real great pleasure to speak with you as finance critic over the last 5 years to get a better understanding of what it is that you need to help make your business better. There's no one, in my opinion, who understands the importance of balanced budgets and responsible financial planning better than a room full of financial advisors. I think that's right. You're here. It's an honor to speak to you today about Ontario's finances. You'll remember when we were in opposition, we were the ones sounding the alarm bells about the state of the province's books under the previous government. I'm going to be a little bit rude today, but it's just the rude reality of where we are once we got the shock of looking at the books. You'll remember we spoke about waste mismanagement and scandal. Well, we learned that the shocking mismanagement was leaving so many hardworking people in Ontario behind. People across the province were having to choose whether to heat or eat, between filling up at the pump and putting food on the table. And that's just a cold, hard reality when you're outside of, especially when you're outside of the GTA. Our loved ones were receiving care in crowded hallways and emergency rooms. My 86-year-old mother was one of those who spent her hospital stay in a hallway. It was a shocking thing to visit her when they thought she had a stroke. It turned out to be something a bit different, but to have to visit my mother in the hallway of the hospital in North Bay was, I can only imagine what it did for her as it did for the rest of our family. Factories that shuttered their doors, leaving hundreds of thousands of people without a job. 320,000 people were formerly working in manufacturing are hollowed out in Ontario, especially if you drove that corridor from Niagara to Fort Erie. You really get a sense of what the hollowed out manufacturing looks like. Hope and opportunity simply vanished for far too many. More than ever, Ontarians needed to know that help was on the way. After a decade and a half, it gives me tremendous pride to say to you that help is finally here. On June 7th, Ontarians voted for change, and we're delivering on that change every single day, and we're delivering on the promises that we made. With a new approach to government, an approach that respects the taxpayers' dollars and restores accountability and trust in government. As financial advisors, you know the first practical step you take when you accept a new client is to open their books and take a look at their budgeting. You can't manage what you can't measure. You cannot provide sound financial advice unless you have a baseline, unless you understand the true state of your client's finances. It's know your client, as they say in your business style. That's what we had to do, as any other new government would do. But this time was different. Our findings of what happened under the previous government's watch were anything but traditional, anything but usual. After 15 years, we had many reasons not to trust the 2018 budget that the previous government introduced prior to the last election. It wasn't a gut feeling. We had an independent opinion back that up. Ontario's Auditor General, Bonnie Lysyk, reviewed the Liberals' pre-election report on Ontario's finances and concluded with the numbers. Now, this is a quote from our Auditor General. The numbers were not a reasonable presentation of Ontario's finances. Now, I'm saying this for the benefit of most of the people from outside of Ontario who may not have heard this before. These are shocking words from an Auditor General. She followed that by saying, quote, in essence, the government is making up its own accounting rules. And if that wasn't enough, she went very, very hard to put an accent on her opinion. And she used words like concealed, unreliable, deceptive, and bogus to describe the government's accounting. Can you imagine an Auditor General who said your books were bogus? These are all quotes that she used to describe the Liberal government's books in the legislature. They're not normal words to describe anyone's accounting, let alone a government's accounting. So in order to restore trust, our government set out to secure an honest accounting of the true state of Ontario's finances. We gave an independent financial commission of inquiry broad discretionary powers to study the numbers and report back with their findings. Michael Horgan, who was the former Deputy Minister of Finance for the federal government for quite some time, Dr. Alan Rosen, and of course, former BC Premier Gordon Campbell, who chaired this commission. These are the members of this independent, very powerful independent commission. There was no right agenda here. There was no ideology used by Premier Ford. We just wanted to know the numbers. And the fact is, the budget numbers were indeed pure fiction. Previous government left us a $15 billion deficit and a $338 billion debt. That's billion with a B. 1,000 million. 338,000 million when you start to think about that. This is what our debt turned out to be in Ontario. $24,000 for every man, woman, and child, for every newborn in the province of Ontario. That's $900 in interest they pay. Each person pays each year. Fourth largest line item. Interest is our fourth largest line item in the Ontario budget. Almost $12 billion, $11.9 billion annually. That's almost $12 billion every single year, $1 billion a month, $1,000 million a month that can't be used for healthcare, education, and social services. Many people have a hard time wrapping their head around $1 billion, let alone these numbers. And there are some who have suggested that the numbers are inflated or concocted. Believe me, there are some who say that this is some kind of political ploy to enable us to report a lower number in our fall economic statement next week. Let me assure you that the magnitude of the deficit is real. It is a structural deficit. I don't have to explain that to you. You understand what that means. That means that $15 billion annual deficit is baked in. That's not for some new program. That is a structural deficit. That's an operating deficit that needs to be attacked. Can you imagine if a household ran a $15,000 deficit every month? What would happen? Well, you'd probably cut up your credit cards. Instead, with a $15 billion deficit and a $12 billion interest bill, we're using our Visa to pay our MasterCard every single month. That's exactly what's happening in the province of Ontario. And it's not sustainable to do that every month, year after year, indefinitely. Eventually it catches up to you, and that time is now. Families know that every dollar that goes into paying down their credit card or loans is one less dollar going to their children's education or their RRSP. That's why our government has made a commitment to get Ontario's fiscal house in order so we can invest in those cherished public services we depend on, both now and in the future. Balancing Ontario's budget is therefore not only a fiscal imperative, it's a moral imperative. The previous government left Ontario incredibly vulnerable to the next economic downturn, and they have recklessly saddled younger Ontarians with this burden. We must act now to put our finances back on a sustainable footing. Understanding this challenging fiscal situation we inherited is only one piece of the puzzle. We need to return to balance in Ontario. We need a timetable that is modest, reasonable, and pragmatic. I call it the Goldilocks approach. It can't be too hot or too cold. We can't do it too quickly. The ratings agencies would never buy that, neither would the people of Ontario. And we can't take too long to do it because, well, anybody, quite frankly, can do that. It needs to be just right. And so it will be reasonable and pragmatic. That's the timetable I would tell you when we're going to balance. To achieve that, we need to reform public services in a way that puts taxpayers at the center of everything we do and put structures in place that create a culture of efficiency. That's why our government undertook a line-by-line review of government spending. At the Ministry of Finance, for instance, we're leading by example, even in the tiniest of things. Believe it or not, our office, like many, has, I call it a hard line. I guess it's a landline. I didn't even know we had landlines on our desks. I never really looked and saw it on my desk. But we took, in my office of 20 people, we took 24 phones away. We kept one at the switchboard, one in the conference room, and one for me to talk to fellow cabinet members. And it saved $10,000. Then we got rid of our fax machine, because every government agency still has a fax machine. That saved $11,000 now. Then we got rid of our coffee service, if you could imagine, on our floor, and our newspaper delivery, and now we're saving $14,000 a year. Again, it's a very small but important example that we are looking for efficiencies. $14,000 from our little tiny office, nobody lost a job, and we found an efficiency. And we expect that now to grow in magnitude to every single agency, board, and commission. And that's not going to solve our fiscal problems, but it sets the tone. Imagine what would happen if other parts of government took a similar approach to every aspect of their business, making those modest but pragmatic changes. They're cost effective, and they make government work more efficiently. So I'll give you another example, because since taking office, we've made remarkable progress. And I'll give you a couple of examples of how government is already making these positive changes. In the first minutes after Cabinet was sworn in, we took OHIP Plus, and you'll recall that the previous government put OHIP Plus in so that everybody under 25 has free pharmacare. We took OHIP Plus and made your parents' provider the provider of first payer. So that, for instance, every government employee has a benefits plan that includes them and their children, but the government was also paying for pharmacare. So now your insurance provider is the payer of first, and the government picks up those who don't have it. So everybody today, still under 25, still has OHIP Plus. We saved $300 million on day one, and nobody lost a job. That's an efficiency. That's what Premier Ford means when he says no cuts, just efficiencies. We saved $300 million that day. That was literally in our first 5 minutes. Cap and trade is another example. We scrapped this punishing program that drove up the cost of everything. Everything that was ever delivered added prices because of cap and trade. Every single Ontario family now saves $264 a year, 4.3 cents a litre on gas, and if you have natural gas at home, it's another $80. These are more than symbolic savings for families. Every single thing had a tax on it from the cap and trade, and now that's gone. Another was the drive clean program. We canceled this outdated program for passenger vehicles and focused only on commercial vehicles. It saves the taxpayer $40 million. We canceled 758 pending wind and solar programs that were going to provide even more power that we don't need. You realize we pay Quebec and the states every single night to take our surplus power, because when our manufacturing sector was hollowed out, we now make more power than we use every day. And you can't store that power properly yet. So we pay the states, we pay them billions of dollars to the states, Pennsylvania, Ohio, New York, Michigan. We pay all of those companies to take our power, and then they come back and steal our customers because they have cheap power. It isn't practical. So we canceled the next 758 wind and solar projects and saved $790 million by doing that. So you can see that we've been transforming government into a modern institution that serves the people far, far better. And we're looking forward to releasing our blueprint next week. The fall economic statement is November 15th, and it really truly will be a blueprint. We'll share more ideas at that time on how we're going to put our province back on a healthy financial footing. But building a stronger balance sheet also means building a stronger economy. So we need to send a clear signal that Ontario is open for business again. Government